on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
One of the reasons that I started writing cookbooks is I got tired of everybody saying they have never had a good game meal.
Somebody on a farm getting ready to cut chickens has a plan. I notice a lot of people hunt and they don't have a plan for what happens if they're successful.
So many different ways you can cook a beaver that's just so delicious.
The first thing I did was cook the back straps rare, basically like venison, and I was just blown away.
Isn't it a sweet red meat?
It's unbelievable.
I love handling everything fresh as I can. It's very medicinal.
Ever since then, I eat June bugs every year.
Python, it's the texture of a scallop.
There's a lot of flavor in this bear you cook.
Friends sitting around the table, talking and drinking and eating.
I feel like those memories of meals shared with people, those will be some of the sweetest memories at the end of my life.
Episode number 62 of the WildFed podcast, How to Eat a Beaver with Kate Gooding, is brought to you by Surthrival. We're closing in on the new year, and despite all the negative mutterings in the world, we believe it's you, not your external influences, that will determine what your 2021 is like. At Surthrival, we're rooting for you to have your best year ever. And we really hope our products can help support you in that goal. We think they can by up-leveling your immune system with colostrum, vitamins D3 and K2, and our medicinal mushroom extracts, helping you build a more fit and resilient body with our elk antler formulas, increasing your testosterone levels with our pine pollen extracts, or even adding some excitement to your bedroom life with our taboo aphrodisia. Right now, the coupon code HOLIDAYS gets you 10% off everything at the store until the end of the year. Check out the entire lineup at surthrival.com. This episode's also brought to you by Farmer's Juice. Farmer's Juice Home delivers cold-pressed juices and wellness shots direct to your door at nearly half the cost of what you'd pay at the juice bar, and they stay fresh for 30 days with nothing artificial added. I'm no psychic, but I'm guessing you'd like to be leaner, healthier, and more vibrant in 2021. Maybe it's time to bring regular fruit and vegetable juices into your diet. Head over to thefarmersjuice.com and just take a look at their incredible offerings. Whether you're looking for earthy root vegetables like carrot and beet, or leafy greens like dandelion, kale, and spinach, fruits like cucumber, orange, or apple, and herbs like ginger, turmeric, basil, and mint, each of their juices contain a full pound of fresh, organic produce with nothing artificial added. I've got a juicer at home, but where I live, we only have quality organic produce for a couple of months of the year. But the folks at Farmer's Juice have access to California's outstanding fresh organic produce, and I'd rather let them do the juicing. Head over to thefarmersjuice.com and use the coupon code WildFed for up to $8 off your order and get these refreshing juices delivered right to your door. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you. Kate Gooding is the author of several iconic Maine wild game cookbooks, including the provocatively titled 50 Ways to Eat a Beaver. And she's an incredible home cook with a special emphasis on Maine's wild proteins. We recently sat down with her for an incredible meal of braised bear with Spanish rice and a really fun conversation about her cooking and the story of how her cookbooks came to be. For me, one of the best parts of working on WildFed is getting to watch cooks and chefs utilize the ingredients I've harvested. Ingredients I'm often working with myself, but in ways I haven't yet learned or even tried. Kate taught us a lot about layering flavors, and in particular, using highest grade spices. And her collection is impressive. Incredible pungent and aromatic flavors from around the world line her well-organized kitchen drawers. These flavors really come through in her cooking, just like her passion for the ingredients she's working with. So sit back and enjoy this fun and free-flowing conversation with Kate, who's inspired us to up-level our cooking game. After all, our meals should be at least as good, if not better than the hunt, because for many of us, that's why we started going into the field in the first place.
Kate Gooding, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to answering some fun questions.
Well, I want to first say thanks for having us over to your house. That's beautiful here.
Thank you.
And you're just down the street from me, which is kind of nice. I think we got here a little bit earlier than we meant to. And I want to say that I got your contact information from the painter who came to stay at my house this year.
Yes.
And he's a hunter, and we got talking about hunting, and we got talking about the bog behind my house. and I mentioned I was going to start beaver trapping this year, and he said, "Oh, well, do you know Kate? You got to talk to Kate." So he sent me to you, and I later realized I knew you from something else, which we'll talk about in a minute. But tell me a little bit about your. I guess you seem like you have a very rich and eclectic background, so maybe we'll do like a brief synopsis of everything, and then we'll dial in on the game cookery stuff.
There is nothing brief about my background.
I can feel it here. Yeah, it seems like you're involved in a lot of different things.
Yes, and as you had mentioned before, 9 to 5 isn't your ish, you know, that's not your bag. Mine either. Yeah. So I did things like I was a mechanic up in Jackman one winter during hunting season, to make some money. The next summer, I actually worked for Scott Paper, driving a bucket loader and a dump truck.
Where'd you learn to do all that?
Scott Paper.
They taught you?
Yeah. I was the first woman they ever hired out in the field.
Wow.
And it was great. Except when my cousin yelled at me for getting out of my little buggy and going to the 7 moose that were standing near me. He goes, "What are you, crazy?" But I'm like, oh my God. I have, I'm curious about life. And so I try a lot of things until it gets to the point where I'm bored with it. Uh-huh. So, I'm usually a 2 to 3 year. My brother used to call me a professional student.
Yeah. I can really relate to what you're saying.
When I learn something and it's like, okay, now what else am I going to learn? Mm-hmm. And so I just keep going, learning new things. So I have hunted. Well, first, my brother gave me a shotgun when I was 19, and I became one of the best skeet shooters when I lived in Connecticut. Then moved up. My family's from Jackman, Moose River. And
for those not in Maine here, Jackman's sort of one of our hunting fishing meccas of the state.
Yeah, right.
How far north do you think that is from here?
Well, I will say it's a little over 3. Well, I've made it in less than 3 hours, but a little over 3 hours. And Moose River is actually 16 miles from the border, the Quebec border.
Okay.
So farther up there. Mm-hmm. And it is great hunting up there. I've actually gotten 2 moose. I want to get a trifecta, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But my brother is a Maine guide.
You've drawn both tags, or were you set permitting on somebody else's?
No, I drew both tags.
Yeah.
And my brother was so mad at me. Chris
so
is
mad.
like, well, because he had put in every year, and I hadn't put in every single year, and he hadn't, and I got picked before him. And then when I got the second pull, and he hadn't gotten picked, he was like livid. But the next year, did he and his son get one? I think it was the following year.
Oh, that's cool. Both of them.
Yeah, except that my nephew didn't shoot his because it wasn't as big as the one that, he got when he was with me.
So much pressure when you wait so long.
I know. Yeah. But, that's definitely bull country up in Jackman. Yeah. So there's some beautiful ones up there.
I bet. Yeah. How many moose you see down this way?
I haven't seen any.
Had one in my backyard the other day.
You're kidding?
Yeah, well, there's some that are living down in the bog behind me, and so occasionally I just saw a juvenile one this year, but I've seen bulls and cows on my game cameras. And I had just remarked to my buddy, I said, I see him on the game camera, but I've never seen him in person. And then the very next day, after living there 5 years, one walked up through my lawn right in the middle of the day.
It presented
itself. But.
Well, our neighbors had one in their yard last summer.
Okay.
And I was home, but, I hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
But I will say this summer, which scared the heck out of me, is I walked out onto the deck and I caught some movement out of my eye, and 5 yards from the deck was a fisher cat climbing down. And I just screamed because my stepdaughter's dog was out and the cats were out, and but I'd never seen one, that close before. I've seen them when we were hiking. This animal was beautiful. It was healthy. The fur was shiny. Yeah, this was like 9:30 in the morning.
Wow. I've seen them on game cameras, but I don't think I've ever seen one in person. I don't see them too often, huh? They're pretty elusive.
Yeah, they are. My brother just caught one in one of his traps.
No kidding. Did he keep it?
Yes, because he traps.
Yeah. Wow. Jeez.
But I don't want the meat for that.
No?
Oh, no.
Kind of skeezy.
Well, can you imagine what it eats?
Yeah.
I mean, I had raccoon once It was
See, that would be weirder to me.
delicious.
Raccoon to me eats worse.
Yes, well,
But I've eaten a possum, and I think that's probably as gross as it gets. I know. Urban one too.
How was a possum?
I had it kind of stewed. It wasn't really much of it. The thing is, everything does taste like meat. I've never had meat unless the meat was handled improperly. I can't think of ever having meat that was bad from like that type of animal is not good. But, anyway, you do a lot more than just hunting, though. I'm looking at all this art on your walls, and I know you have the art gallery in town here.
Yes, correct? I run I don't own it. It's a cooperative. All the artists own it together.
Okay.
But I started getting interested in art back in 1999 when I was living in Portland, and I started volunteer for the AIDS Project annual art auction. And I learned every different facet of how to do this art auction. And it was amazing. So when I met Don and moved up to Mount Desert Island, because that's where he was living, and I worked with the Southwest Harbor Public Library and developed this art auction live and silent for them. And it wasn't enough for the artists, so I did this open studio days because somebody had done it quite a few years before that. So we would have on Saturday one half of the island, on Sunday the other half of the island. We'd have a map for everybody. And if you look at my first cookbook, which you'll see, what divides each of the chapters is a piece of art from some of the artists that I worked with.
Oh, okay. Got it.
So I have always carried that through. And we, Don and I both love art. He owned, I think, 2 of these, maybe 3 before we got together.
Okay.
And then we've bought, this piece over here, we bought on our second
I've
date.
that piece. So
yeah,
beautiful.
Tom Curry. He's up in the Brooklyn area.
Okay.
And they're all 99% Maine artists.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Your cookbooks are books that I had I've seen for years in a lot of like mom and pop shops in Maine, right? You see them often at the counter.
You probably stopped at Barry's in the Forks because they carry them.
Yeah. And then, but I've seen them like even in town here at the Lobster Pound or,
yes.
I'm just thinking I've seen them at maybe
Nate's, Tasteful Things.
What about, are you at like any of the I-95 little gift shops at the rest stops and stuff? I think I might have even seen them there.
I'm not sure.
But anyway, I've seen them all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
For years I've been seeing them, and it never connected for me who you were or any of that. But tell people about those books and what's the story there?
Well,
and how many are there?
I wrote 6. I self-published 4, and they're under the Black Fly Stew title. And then I wrote 2 for 2 companies, one in Oregon and one in Vermont.
Okay.
So 2 private ones. How I got going on it is I've cooked all my life, and I love cooking. And I was working for my husband for acapella.com, which you probably heard of the movie Pitch Perfect.
Yeah.
So the movie was about our company.
Very eclectic.
We had
eclectic.
He had a international college competition, and as competitive as I am, so I started the international high school competition, which has gone crazy. I fought 7 groups to compete the first year, and now there's like over 150 that apply every year. So Anyway, I told you about not being able to stay with a job when I get bored. So after 7 years, I quit for my husband, and I said, okay, I have to do some consulting. I was just bored with the day-to-day stuff that I just didn't like to do, and I'm not an administrator, so I just left. So a friend of mine asked me to write a cookbook for her, so I started doing some research and she's wanted me to do it 100% commission, and I said, that's not going to work. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I've done all this work. I'll just start writing my own. Well, the hardest thing for me to do, because Don calls it cooking with jazz, is to measure everything.
Oh, yeah. I love to cook, but if you ask me about ratios or even what a tablespoon looks like, I don't even really know.
Yeah, so that was the most difficult thing. So I said, I need help with this. So I wrote to people and just said, do you have friends who want to test? I'll give you a cookbook, So the first cookbook, I had 39 testers from around the United States.
Oh, wow.
And
that means they recook the recipes as you've written them.
Yes, and they give me feedback.
Okay.
Because there's so many things that I assume. For instance, my favorite one is Don was doing I think it was a bear bourguignon recipe, but he was doing a bread with it too. And I had said to make sure that you cover the bread with a damp towel. Well, I didn't say, in the oiled bowl and everything, because, I assume everybody knows this. So he yells, come in the house. He had a question right in the beginning. And I came in and I go, what is this wet towel all scrunched up here? He goes, oh, the bread's in there. So my fault, it's like you people just, they're not, there are many people that love to cook, but they are a follower of the recipe.
Yeah.
It's not intuitive to them.
Yeah.
And so that was the most difficult thing in writing the cookbooks.
Yeah. Wow. That's funny. Yeah. And then there's so many things like we've all fall here in summer, we were getting celery from our friend. I don't know if you know Brenna May over at
Patch Farm. Brenna and Brandon.
Right?
They're
so
awesome.
Good. So she's been growing this celery, which is almost like borage. It's a heirloomy, salty, really rich.
Are those the really big, tall ones?
No, it's like very thin, stringy.
Like
if you
lovage.
saw it, sorry, not borage, lovage.
Lovage,
It's like lovage. It's got that really
Leafy.
distinct, strong celery flavor. You cook with that versus like one of those big inflated, nitrogen-filled, watery celeries from the supermarket. Like you're not going to get the same outcome. So I always am like, it's just hard for me to think about ratios because I know ingredients vary so much and all that.
And the flavor, but I will say it's funny because you go through my cookbooks and you probably won't see any celery in there. I don't like it. So I don't
Oh, no
cook with it.
kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm interested to talk about stock in a bit then.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll come back to that. But your first cookbook is called what?
Wild Maine recipes. And the wild Maine was not only the wild game, but the combination of all the different spices and levels of spices and things that I use.
And then tell us the names of the other ones.
So the second one was Simple Gourmet Lamb, Side Dishes and Wine Pairings. The third one was 50 Ways to Eat a Beaver.
Yeah.
And then the last one was Free Range Fish and Lobster.
Okay. Oh, cool. I think I've seen that one around. How did the Beaver book go over? I'm curious about that. Because you can't just get around talking about this. It's just the funniest. It's just everybody laughs.
Yes.
It's so awkward.
Well, my husband came up with the title because he said it would. And a lot of people in the beginning would be just buying it just because it was a good table talk,
Of course.
So
Sounds like it might be in a different category than cooking.
yes. And however, a lot of people that were trapping started to try it. And I wanted to write the Beaver cookbook because my friend Dwayne up in Jackman had actually taken me trapping and his brother, and we went out. So I learned how to trap at that point. And unbeknownst to me, he had asked his mother to make dinner for when we got back. Never even thought about it. She had made these most delicious, thank you, Arlene. It was a barbecued beaver on these buttered noodles, and it was the best thing. And I just started asking people around town, are you going to trap? Can I get some, beaver this year? And so now my brother does some trapping, but the pelts, they're not trapping as much anymore because of the it's not very profitable for them.
For listeners who aren't aware, the value of pelts drove so much of the trapping that was going on in the past, right?
Yes.
And now where you can't really get much money for the pelts, it's mostly probably nuisance trapping, I imagine, that's still going on.
Yeah, and actually, Tom in town, I had mentioned to you before, he traps for the castors.
Okay, so the castors have value. Those are
Yes.
the castor glands.
Right, for the perfume industry.
Okay, I was wondering that. Are they going into lure making or are they going into perfume?
Could be both.
Yeah, probably a bit of both.
You know what
Yeah.
he's getting for that? Like price per ounce?
I don't. But he said he gets good money for him.
When we took that trapping class, one of the guys was deep into that
Oh, yeah.
with beavers and skunks.
Skunks, all the skunk glands.
It takes a specific person to be doing that for a living.
Yes.
This is an interesting part of the conversation for me. I've just spent the week degreasing and dyeing traps, and it's so old timey. It's like you would think you could just buy traps that were ready to put out, but it's like you're going back into the 1800s or something with this. Like if I go buy a rifle, like it's ready out of the box, basically, right? You don't have to do any like extra steps for it, really. But the trapping thing, it's like it hasn't come all the way into the modern era. And then with it, there's such discomfort around the conversation. I'm actually, before we go too far into the beaver piece, one of the questions I have is just getting a feel for you, how you dress and present, your husband, your home, where you work in town. I wouldn't imagine you, if I was stereotyping or if I was painting with really broad brushstrokes, I wouldn't guess you were somebody friendly to trapping.
Or hunting.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. You, the feeling I would have is like, oh, I might not want to bring that up just because I don't know if that's making sense what I'm saying. I'm trying to be delicate, but
no, it
you know what I'm
is.
saying? So you're almost surprising me here, with that. And so I'm wondering, you must have a lot of friends who are like, wait, what? Trapping? Like what?
Yes. I remember when we did both of us are very social. And so whenever I would cook up on Mount Desert Island, especially, everybody would come in and just say, nope, I don't want to know until we're done eating. Always. And for 25 years in a row, I would have my annual winter solstice party. And the biggest party, we had 71 people.
Wow.
And that's when I would do all my different, I would do every single kind of game meat, and I would go to all my resource and say, okay, it's getting near time. And
it's really interesting you say that, because I think this is my 5th annual winter solstice party coming up.
Oh, great.
Where I always do a game cookery thing. And so I invite all my friends who I know are into that kind of thing. And and every year, one year it was squirrels, and I think last year we did bear. And this year I'm intending to serve, I want to do beaver tamales. So that's the plan. So anyway, it's kind of interesting that you do the winter solstice thing.
Yeah, I actually have a couple recipes that I won't talk about, but I will give you so you can surprise.
All right. I like it. I like it. Yeah, so, the trapping thing is kind of a throwback, and learning about it's getting challenging because there's not that many people left around who are doing it. I mean, I know they're out there, but it's not like hunting where it's quite easy to find an inroad into it if you're interested in learning. And Grant and I were able to take a trapping safety class a year or two ago.
It's hard to get into that class.
It was hard to even find one of those.
Oh.
Very comprehensive class. I was pretty impressed with it, but it was hard. It took a long time to even find one. They're running those hunter safety courses all the time, but there's so few people looking to trap now.
Right.
But I got drawn to trapping from the meat perspective. So the value of hides isn't really an issue for me. Mm-hmm. And we have a friend, Randy, who traps beaver. So he gave us some beaver last year. And I think the first thing I did was cook the back straps rare, like like deer meat, basically, like venison, and I was just blown away.
I know. Isn't it a sweet red meat?
It's unbelievable.
I try to explain that to people, and it's like, that's a big rat. Well, it's a really delicious big rat.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Look what it eats.
It's starting to make me think about what's a rat like.
Well, no, rats. You don't want to go there. You might as well eat a raccoon or a coyote.
Oh, man. I eaten one coyote. But because I like. Do you like gray squirrel?
Yes.
I mean,
it's just like dark chicken meat.
Another rodent, though, you know, and it's like we also we call him Sylvan Charles. That's our name for the woodchuck.
Oh,
that's our dressed up name, Sylvan, like of the woods, and Chuck instead of like Charles. Sylvan Charles.
That's funny.
But again, a ground squirrel, another rodent,
yeah,
delicious. I find them really nice. But beaver, something really special going on, and then of course those hams braised are just. Wow, they're so outrageously good.
Oh, and I've made summer sausage and links, and I mean, just so many different ways you can cook a beaver that's just so delicious.
At least 50 ways. Years ago, I've been into foods, kind of been the defining thing in my defining interest, I'd say. So I've done a lot of things, sort of like you, just sort of moved around a lot, but always food's been at the middle of it for me. and nutrition I've been really interested in. And so years ago, prior to, I guess, this sort of digital age we're in now, I had a DVD that was like a burned DVD of an episode of Bizarre Foods with, what's his name? Zimmerman?
Andrew Zimmerman.
So I had this disc that, I don't know how I ended up with it, but it was the main episode. And in that episode is a woman who cooks a beaver meal for him. I really remember because he says he's got that kind of sort of lispy accent. I remember him being like, "Ooh, I've never had beaver before." I just remember it being like kind of a funny scene, and I didn't connect that is you cooking.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear that story, how that all came together.
So he had talked to everybody that he was working with and had said, "I haven't had beaver meat yet." And I was selling my cookbook to a class, one of the bookstores in Portland, Maine, and she happened to be his classmate. And so she said, well, you have to talk to Kate. So he called and he said, or the person that, called me and said, "We're interested in Andrew Zimmern coming and talking with you, and actually if you would cook a beaver dinner for him." And I was like, "Ooh," well, because everybody knew him back then.
Sure.
So I said, absolutely. So then we just started the whole process of, what he wanted to look like. And he set up a whole tour, if you remember the episode, because his father was turning 80. So he had this huge party for him out on one of the islands off of Portland. And he had talked to Linda Greenlaw for fishing, and he just was making his way
Linda
up.
in that episode too?
Yes.
Oh, I'd love to go back and rewatch the episode. It's been years,
Yes.
I didn't know who she was back then, because now I've read her. I haven't met her. I've read her books though,
yes.
and obviously know her sort of famous story and everything from.
She's
Perfect
very
Storm.
nice, and kind of a quiet person.
She's a
really.
great writer, isn't she?
Yes.
Very talented writer.
Yes.
Surprisingly talented for, I guess. It's a surprising talent coming out of the fishing industry, because fishing literature doesn't always wow me, I'll say. But her books are like, I can't put them down.
Oh, she's really very articulate.
Talented.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And knows how to arc the story so that it, because it's cool she can tell a story of a fishing trip and it feel like an adventure, epic adventure, and it's just one of her trips. I mean, it's amazing how she arcs the story.
She draws people in that way. She's I'm not as articulate as her. I do well in the kitchen.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll stay there.
Yeah.
But when you watch the episode again, so a friend of mine, David, I had set Andrew up with him to go out in a canoe and, see beaver in the water and watching it slap at him. And so doing that whole process. And then when, we got to be really good friends, before we got together. And so they're driving up the driveway because they said, "Are you going to get us some roadkill?" Well, somebody the day before said, somebody just hit a beaver. So I went and got the beaver and brought it back to the house. And I said, "Oh my God, where am I going to put it?" And I said, "Oh, Don, we'll put it in the wine cellar." He goes, "Absolutely not." So I don't remember where I ended up putting it, but when they drove up the driveway the next day, they were like 5 hours later than they were going to be because of the weather. They had to go back and do anyway with Linda Greenlaw. So they came up the driveway, and we had 39 acres, so we had lots of deer dropping antlers and everything. I had a beaver hanging off of a big rock with horns coming out of it. So they're driving up the driveway, and they're all like, it was so hysterical.
Where were they coming from? Do you know?
Stonington.
Yeah. Oh, but I mean, where were they headquartered out of?
I think Ohio.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But it was a great day of filming. We had built a fire pit when they decided they just wanted to do it at our house, because I sent pictures of our property. So here we are 5 days before filming, and we are digging a brand new fire pit so we could do beanhole beans, and then we had set up for doing the moose steak, and then the beaver chili, and then but we had a blast.
Yeah. That's really cool. It's cool to be sitting here with you, because was my first exposure to the idea that you could even eat beaver. It's hard to even say. You know what else I picked up in that episode? Because he had gone, don't know if they went to Peaks or something. There was like some kind of food contest. Was that what it was?
Well, the June bugs.
That's what I've ever since then. I eat June bugs every year.
Yeah.
I cook them every year, and I'm always my wife is like, that's kind of the.
Has she tried?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think that's sort of like beaver, no problem. Like she's down. Squirrel, she's down. Alligators, iguanas, like she's down with all kinds of stuff. But kind of hit the wall on the June
bugs.
thing. But I actually quite like them. I quite like them.
So how do you cook them?
I'll usually just two things. I'll either do them on a fairly dry pan and just kind of toast them, or I'll kind of roast them lightly in the oven. And I just put salt and spice to them, like a nice chili garlic spice to them, and a little bit of oil. And they're
What's
a lot
the texture like
popcorn.
Really? It's not gooey.
Oh, there's a place in Portland that actually I ordered a salad and they have grasshoppers.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
Just,
That
roasted.
you expect them to be gooey. Insects in general.
I would
are
expect a June bug to be gooey.
Crispy, I would say, like a Cheeto or Frito kind of. Not a Cheeto, a Frito.
Well, you got to get me on these because I told you, me and my brother grew up with like a healthy fear of June bugs for whatever reason.
Really?
They're like a burdock burr when they stick to you.
Yeah.
You know the way they feel. Yeah, you just turn all the lights on at night in the
then
summer and
come
just
to
let
the
them hit the
screen.
screens and then go around and collect them up. But,
Oh, I haven't done that yet.
oh yeah, they're fun. But I don't know. Entomophagy interests me. But I would love to talk a little bit about. I bring this bear roast over to the gallery yesterday, and for listeners, you had suggested we bring some game by and you do some cooking. So thank you, by the way. I'm excited for lunch, and we had a little taste before we started. But they were not at all surprised that I was dropping a bear roast off. That felt like that was par for the course around
Well,
there.
they know me.
Yeah, that was my impression. It's like, yeah, I have this bear roast to drop off. They're like, oh yeah, the refrigerator's back there. So that was really funny. But I would love to hear about how you treat bear and how you think about bear when you cook it, and what you did with this piece in general.
Oh, I love bear. Bear and beaver are probably my two favorite game meats.
Well said.
So
That's the voice of a person who's eaten a big range of game meats, because a lot of people say they like game, but they really just eat deer and moose or something, you know what I mean? But it's like, if you eat bear and you eat beaver, you're like, you know how unusually good they
Delicious.
are. So good.
And interesting, just as a little segue back to the beginning, one of the reasons that I also started writing cookbooks is I got tired of everybody saying they have never had a good game meal.
Wow.
And that just, I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
It was just, you have to learn how to cook it.
Yeah.
And people are afraid, so they cook the heck out of it.
Yep.
And like you had said before about the beaver straps, you just, like a venison, you do a sear on each side and then it's...
Eat it rare.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Do you butcher, or do you work with meat that's already been cut?
Both.
Okay. So that's a big piece of it too to me, is like I often, with bears, I often wonder, what's this bear been through by the time because a lot of people aren't intending to eat the bear, so they don't necessarily gut them, they don't get them cold. It's almost like, I almost feel like sometimes people want to let them spoil so that they don't have to go through the process.
Yes. And it's important, as we had mentioned before, that the game meat, that the animal is appreciated and taken care of from when it is killed to the cleaning of it, the proper cleaning of it, and making sure that, because of the weather, where it is properly temperatured. Otherwise, it will be gamey. Mm-hmm. And so I had received for the first time some beaver quite a few years ago that had sat just, I can tell how long it has sat by the level of the gaminess. And that is the first time that I ever said, that when someone says the meat is too gamey, that's why when I do any of my presentations or cooking demonstrations, I always say it is very important for you to understand and know how this animal was taken care of from the field to your table. Because it really does make a difference how long it sets. The longer it sets, that's when that gamey flavor
Makes you wonder then if domestic animals would get that way if you treated them that same way, you know, if gaminess has anything to do with game, or if it's just about, you know, when something's slaughtered in a proper slaughter facility on a farm, usually they have all the infrastructure in place. Like somebody on a farm getting ready to cut chickens has a plan.
Right.
I notice a lot of people hunt and they don't have a plan for what happens if they're successful, especially with bears because they're so hard to get out of the woods.
Yes.
And so a lot of times the bear's on the ground, they're like, all right, what are we going to do? And you're like, uh-oh, this is going to be all night.
And that's why I also stress how important it is to have a guide. If you don't have a plan and you're coming from out of state.
Yeah.
I mean, because they may not have been able to eat that animal if they wanted to because they just didn't know how to take care of it properly.
Yeah.
And field dressing, if they don't know how to field dress it, that could spoil the meat.
Yeah. So let's say that that's all been done well, and I'd love to hear sort of how you, once you get to the kitchen with a piece of meat, like what you're thinking of. For instance, that bear roast that I dropped off was probably
2 3/4 pounds.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I also wanted to weigh so I know how much spices and herbs and length I'm going to be cooking it and everything else. So because of the cut that you brought, I knew that it wasn't a sear. It needed a lot of braising. And so, but because I love the flavor, I like to sear it in with herbs and spices and ghee, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is what I did for this one. And so what I did is I went out into the garden. Thank goodness we still have fresh savory and thyme. And those are the two things that I use because thyme is pungent and I really like that. And summer savory is got that spicy pepper, if you bite into a little leaf of it. And so I thought those combinations with a little bit of salt and some pepper, ground that all up together. And then it's always important to include a kosher or a sea salt if you're going to be doing a wet ground because it will also actually hold it together, but also we'll be able to separate it because you have the dryness of the salt and you have the wetness of your herbs.
Oh, okay.
So I rubbed that in and then I seared both sides really well.
Okay, so you're just browning the meat in the ghee?
Yep, in the ghee on both sides. Took it out. Then I added some onions and cardamom, a little bit. Let's see, what else did I do?
Cardamom in there.
Yeah, well,
Cool,
I always, a cardamom and a little allspice.
Okay.
And I did that because the game stock that I used was a moose. What did I say? Moose, buffalo, and venison.
Okay.
So I had all of those bones, and so I made a stock out of that.
How big's the format when you're doing that? Like how big of a pot are you using?
Very
You got a
big.
one, yeah.
Yeah.
You can your stock or freeze it or?
Both. Depending upon how much I'm making and what I think I'm going to be doing during the winter, depends on how big the cans and jars are for this one.
So I want to get to the bear, but now I've got to stop on the stock here because, it just gets pushed on you all the time. The mirepoix, is that the word?
Mirepoix.
So that's celery, onion, and carrot, but you don't like celery, so tell me about that.
We'll get right back to the show in a moment, but first, you've been listening to the WildFed podcast, but have you seen the WildFed TV show? Starting January 4th, WildFed will be airing on the Outdoor Channel. That's right, our season premiere will be January 4th at 7 p.m. Season 1 has now been expanded to 10 episodes. So if you've seen the original 8, there are now 2 new shows for you to check out. We'll be on the air Mondays at 7 and 11 p.m. and on some Saturdays as well. If you've got cable access or you can get access to it, check us out starting January 4th. Let the Outdoor Channel know that you love WildFed by adding to their ratings. And we'll be keeping you posted on smart TV and streaming details as they become available. I'll be hosting some social media live streams for Outdoor Channel as shows start airing, so be sure to follow WildFed on social media to be notified about those. Thanks again for all your incredible support in 2020, and we hope you'll be following along on the Outdoor Channel in 2021. Now, back to the show.
I don't use a mirepoix always.
Love it.
Although I have,
Iconoclast.
and I use fennel pollen.
Pollen?
Yeah. It's a powdery. It's the pollen from the and the
Really?
stamen from the fennel.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's
and,
an herb a spice you can buy?
Uh-huh.
Huh. I've never heard of that. Have you heard of that, G?
No.
Oh.
Getting my world rocked here.
the spicehouse.com is my place to go.
Okay.
I've actually went out to Chicago to do some demonstrations for them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love their. I am a spice person for them. I'm like I just got like a couple $100 worth of spices now to hopefully last me. It won't last me the way.
Can you walk us through your basics of making a stock?
All right, so I will take the bones. I now have my own boning drill. Saw, thank you. And it's strictly just for bones since I get them, and then my husband does most of the cutting for me because I want to make sure that I have a lot of marrow showing because that's where the gelatinous comes from for that. I will probably boil a huge pot down for a few days. And
do you roast them first, or are they going in?
Sometimes. It depends on what I'm going to be doing. So, so I do both. It depends on, and I mark them what I'm doing if the bones are roasted or not.
But you'll cook them down for a couple days?
Yes.
You just keep adding water and reducing?
No, actually, I don't.
You start with a big pot?
I start with a big pot and bring it to a heavy boil, and then I simmer it with it closed for, a good day anyway. And then I'll start cooking it with the cover off, partially, to get some of the concentration out. Yes. And it depends on if I'm doing a stock or a broth that I'll add carrots or onions, or I'll just do it strictly a broth with nothing in it. And I might salt the bones just a little bit.
Okay.
How much water to bones are you adding? Like, are you just covering the bones, or are you putting a lot more water?
Well, usually the bones I have go right to the top of the pot anyway, one of those ginormous pots.
Okay, so you're making them rich.
Very rich.
Yeah.
I love...
Because there's a lot of flavor in this berry you cooked.
That's very rich.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of my layering that I like.
Of flavors.
Yes, lots of flavors.
Okay.
So, there's a lot of variations, roasting, not roasting, broth versus stock, how concentrated you're going to do it, all of that.
Yep. Seems like the crucial ingredient to have around the house. Like, when I don't have it, quality of my cooking is so much different.
Yeah, and
Such a bummer when you need to use water instead of stock.
Oh, that's a sin.
Keeping up on it all, though.
It is hard, and I do not like powdered stocks.
Tetra Pak of it. Those
yes,
little tear off the top.
Oh, awful.
Bouillon cube.
I have had to resort to that sometimes.
Yeah.
There's this good product called Better Than Bouillon. It's like a kind of like a gel that you can get.
I don't even like where you're going with this.
You gotta try
Oh, that's not those little, looks like little cat food containers where it's plastic on the bottom and comes off the top. Okay.
It's not plastic. It's a glass jar.
Oh, Better Than Bouillon.
It's better.
10,000 milligrams of sodium.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, having the real thing's important. But okay, so back to the bear. You were walking us through your recipe a little bit.
Yes, so there's in this one there is yellow onion, leek, fresh garlic, red wine, the game stock, allspice, cardamom, a bay leaf, fresh bay leaf. The summer savory, the thyme, salt.
There's not tomato in there, huh?
No.
It's got to be the wine, and then maybe this is onion that I'm seeing. That's like almost stained from the wine. Then it's really
probably
good.
probably the leek.
Oh yeah, it must be the leek.
Yes, because that will pick up and stain more. For instance, when I do chowders, I like to do a red onion in it.
Yeah.
Just because I like color in my food, and so it ends up the red onion turns either a bluish green or something anyway, just to give another color and texture in the.
Yeah. When you put a piece of meat like that, so would you say 2 3/4 pound into? Are you doing it in a crock pot, or you did that in like a Dutch
did
oven?
it on a enamel, cast iron pot.
How much liquid are you putting in there?
So I did 1 cup of this concentrated stock and 1.5 cups of red wine.
Okay, so it's coming up how high on the meat? This is what I'm always wrestling with. Like how much liquid do I want
Just almost to the top of the meat. That's it.
Yeah. So just the top of the meat's exposed over the top, little island. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because it came out nice, and then you just simmered it for how long?
So I did it for 3 hours last night, and then I turned the oven off and let it sit in there. And then I put it back on this morning for 2 hours.
That's cool.
On 275.
That way all the flavors kind of can come out
Yes,
overnight.
even more.
It's a good
Because
idea.
it just
I like
sits with
that.
it.
'Cause I'm always struggling with that. Like right after you cook something, it doesn't taste the best. Something like this.
Yeah, where if
A
it sits
braised
overnight,
meat. Yeah,
you really get all that flavor
yeah.
comes out. Yeah, I agree.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, the second day, don't tell me you have not said, "Oh my God, it tastes much better."
That's it.
today."
That's,
Yeah,
that's what we're saying. It always does. Yeah. Yeah. Especially, if it just sits for a while like that. What are some of the things people get wrong with game cookery, do you think?
Cook it too fast, too hot, not enough seasoning. A lot of people don't know the cuts of meat, especially for game. It doesn't transfer from beef from the store to game meat. There is a disconnect. This is what I hear from people. It could be the same cut, but there is some sort of a disconnect that they don't know how to handle that part, that this part of the meat should just be braised, or this part of the meat should be like a nice steak, should just be seared on both sides and just enjoy it. You just want it red and warm in the center. They're just afraid, I think. And so they cook a game steak so it's cooked the whole way through.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I were just watching this show Alone. It's like a survival kind of show, people all by themselves, filming themselves in the... Hey, do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen this? Anyway,
We don't have a
TV
thing.
You know how it is, though. We have the internet. But anyway, like people surviving alone, filming themselves. It's like a competition who can last the longest out there. And one by one, everybody's getting sick, And I'm watching it and I'm going like, what's happening here exactly? Why are these, like a guy got sick, he ate that muskrat. He got sick, real sick. I don't like seeing things like that where they reinforce this idea that wild foods make people sick. You see it everywhere all the time. But when you hunt and fish and forage, or you have access to those ingredients, it's like they're such clean, healthy foods. So it's hard to see that be reinforced in the public mind all the time because it's not accurate, And it leads to things like why people would imagine a beaver is not very good to eat. But
It's all this subliminal marketing.
yeah, exactly. Drives you back. It's all to sell that beef, Grant. That's what it is.
You know what? More for us.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I say.
Exactly. Tell me about the. So I'm like I said, I'm going to start trapping beavers this year, and I'd love your input on how to approach them.
Well, you're going to be using fresh wood, right? In your the conibears.
Oh, you're going to give me some trapping advice here.
All right, no, I won't. Okay.
No, I want that. No, please.
No,
Do you have it?
that's all. I know minimal.
No, I mean when I get them into the kitchen, so that's what I'm asking.
Oh.
So once I get to the kitchen, I got friends who are real good on the here's what you need to do to get them into the traps.
Right.
So to answer your question, conibears and MB750 footholds I'm going to be using too. That's like I was saying earlier, that's the stuff that's hard to talk about. My wife's sort of, she's a lifelong aquatics person, so swimmer, kayaker, water polo player, synchronized swimmer. She's been in the water her whole life and had some near drowning experiences in her kayaking career.
Ooh.
And the idea to her of that we are going to drown these animals is really hard.
Hard for her.
And it's hard for me too, actually. I just can harden to it a little more easily. And knowing that that's the only legal method of take, like I can't shoot them. I'm not allowed to get them another way. That's all I'm allowed to do, So, I'm kind of at peace with it, but I see how for the public, the idea of drowning a mammal is kind of brutal sounding, At the same time, doesn't it seem to affect the meat quality? You would imagine that like sort of, at the end there's a little bit of drama.
But see, that's why it's so important for you to understand how to set it up properly so that when the beaver
quick.
goes in, it is quick.
Yeah.
And the better you do, the better you get at it. I mean,
Yeah.
you'll understand that.
Yeah, with those conibears, right? Because that's a body gripper, especially if you get them right behind the head and in the neck there. I imagine that's a very fast process. But on those footholds, right? So you've got the cable that runs down into the water that the foothold trap is attached to. And when they get caught in that, they go down into the water to escape, and then they can't get back out because it's got that one way on it, right? I just think of how long a beaver can hold its breath. It's like a long time. It's crazy, man. But this is sort of how we, watching that show has been interesting because these people they're trying to survive. I mean, they're in the Arctic, and so setting a lot of snares and a lot of traps, and you sort of realize like how important trapping was historically for Homo sapiens, throughout time, the ability to passively be getting food and not have to actively be hunting. You set your traps and check your trap line. That this is something we've been doing for so very long, but in our modern era, it comes across so strangely to people.
Well, I wanted, before I answer your question again about handling the beaver in the kitchen, I just want to reflect back a minute the way you talked about how much more difficult it is for trapping because it is such a old sport. And that's what I loved about the trapping and understanding that. Because if you really have to love trapping to go through that whole process to get ready, and it's the same way in the kitchen. I love handling everything fresh as I can. For me, it's very medicinal.
Yeah.
To be able to go back, you're going back to your roots. I go out and
At like an emotional, spiritual level, you mean?
Yeah. It's a de-stressor for me.
Right.
If I'm stressed, I cook. It's a wonder we're not 500 pounds, But gardening and this, is really a distressor for me.
Yeah.
So I just love creating. I'll say to Dawn, I am just so tired of cooking. I need a break. And the next day I'm like, oh my God, guess what? And I was like, I just think of all these different layers, because I read tons and tons, of recipes online. That's how I do a lot of my research. And then, Wikipedia has been amazing for how the historical aspect of the herbs and everything are and how they have developed over the years.
An example would be you might look up a specific herb.
All right, so thyme.
Yeah.
So there are over 300 varieties of thyme. And so I will say, my favorite is the French narrow leaf, and it's not even listed in there because it's just one of those rare ones. And then there's the German one, and then there's the English one, and then there's a Mediterranean one. But if you understand the history and you find places where you can you can purchase the good herbs that you like, then you can develop your dishes from that. And so now going into the kitchen, knowing what the beaver meat tastes like now, and depending upon how much, where I have got it, will depend on if I'm doing a braise or if I'm going to make a sausage. Or if I'm just going to eat the back straps. I mean, so the best story my husband loves telling is we were married 3 years before I ever let him have a back strap. So I would get them and I would eat them when they went.
Did you really?
Yes. No. Well, because they're so precious.
Oh my gosh, did he know or
no? Because I always had, beaver, so I was making it. So, but now he gets them
because they are. You're talking about the beaver backstraps. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they are like the size of a little button buck's tenderloin or something. They're tiny.
Yeah,
I haven't had the backstrap yet. I've just had the hams.
Oh, my brother had got a super blanket 2 years ago that was 60 inches.
Super blanket is a reference to the size of the beaver, correct?
Yes. Yeah, there's 3 different sizes.
The way you grade the pelts out.
Yes.
Super blanket.
Super blanket. So it was like 60.
I was lost for a second there. So.
Oh, sorry. You get caught. You got in the lingo,
I love it. You don't you just don't look like the part. It's amazing. It's amazing. I just love that when
I
somebody
put this plaid shirt on and my
but it's
black
like,
flight
it's a
stew,
pink-
you know.
it's pink and lavender and turquoise plaid, you know. I love when somebody surprises you like that, you know. I think it's easy to say, like, you should go through life without any stereotypes, but it's like, well, they exist because it allows you to simplify your world a little bit. And so it's fun when you get your little foundations shaken.
A lot.
I'd expect you to say super blanket. That was so cool. Oh man. But anyway, you were saying, so you got the super blanket.
Yeah, so
60-pound beaver.
Yeah, I know, 60 inches long.
Oh, it's like 60 pounds. Because how big will they get? 30 pounds?
This one was 48.
48 pounds? Yeah.
He said it was huge. Yeah, it was,
So-
tip to tail. 60
maybe-
inches, that's 5
I'm
feet.
trying to think. I know so little about them. I've just been reading about them all week. And it's like, I can't remember what I was seeing. But I think, 50 pounds is sort of like getting up to that upper limit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anyway.
It was a beautiful, beautiful hide.
Wow.
So anyway, I decide what I'm going to do with the different parts of the meat, whether I'm going to make a sausage, and that'll determine, the spices and herbs that I decide to make.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite way to eat a beaver?
Well, either the back straps, or I have this recipe where
She's
I wrap
hiding 'em
the
from her
legs,
So good.
wrap the legs in herbs and bacon and braise them in the oven for hours. I love beaver baked beans.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites, beaver baked beans.
So
Okay.
you just have like chunks of stew meat kind of in baked beans?
I throw the whole leg in.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrap that in bacon too, and you just stick it in. And then you put your beans, lots and lots of mustard. I do both wet and dry, and then your regular salt, pepper, molasses.
And that meat falls off the bone.
Oh, yeah.
And you put that back into the beans and eat it like that? Mm-hmm. Look on your face.
Oh, my God. It's so good. I have a picture of our neighbor, my girlfriend's granddaughter, Isabella, chewing on a beaver bone that got out of and I published it in the Maine Sportsman.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes. Oh, it was great.
When you do the back straps, are you just putting some salt and pepper? What oil do you cook in?
So I belong to a olive oil club, and so I love.
Oh wow! There's
using,
olive oil clubs.
Yes.
I'm gonna need to. My wife's gonna want to join this. I think.
Oh.
She's
Like
she's gotten me cooking with olive oil again lately. Recently, she was like, babe, we need to talk about the bear fat. She's like, it's a little heavy for me. Because I was cooking with bear fat for the last probably 3 years exclusively with bear fat. And she finally was like, listen, my body does really good on olive oil. Can you please start to cook with a little more olive oil? And so I have been, and that's got me thinking a lot about different olive oils because, wow, do they vary.
Yes, they do. So the last 2 shipments, one, you get 3 little
It's like
bottles.
a subscription thing?
It is.
Like, yeah. People
People
do that with wine and beer and
Yes.
stuff.
Could I sign up for that?
Yes.
Oh, I might not tell her. She's not probably going to hear the show. I'm going to sign up for that.
Oh, my God, Christmas present for
Yeah,
her.
exactly.
So you get 3, 6, 9. You get quarterly. You get 3 bottles.
Oh, she would love it.
So I got 3 bottles from Chile, the last one, and I just got 3 bottles from Australia.
What are your preferred tasting notes, or do you like a range of stuff for different applications?
I like a range. All these ones from Australia are all very green.
Mm-hmm.
The ones from Chile had not a little bit of earthy minerally. I actually liked the Chile ones a lot.
They all pretty full flavored? Or?
Most of them. I've gotten one from Sicily, actually, that wasn't it was a little bit milder, but it really went well when I added some fresh bruised rosemary and sea salt. So, you just, you just learn once you taste it, it's like, okay, what would go, well with that?
I used to be in this raw food vegan culture, and people were always doing these liver cleanses. And so what you're doing is like fasting for a few days, and then you drink a pretty big dose of olive oil. So the idea is like you're you're getting no fat, so your bile production's normal. You're producing all this bile, but you're not excreting it because you're not eating any fats, so your body doesn't have any need to dump that bile. And your gallbladder fills and fills and fills, and then you drink a kind of a big dose of olive oil, and then all of a sudden your gallbladder just flushes all at once into your intestinal tract because it's going, oh my God, I gotta emulsify all of this fat. So you get this huge bile dump, and but there's a little more to it than that, but that's the sort of basics of it. Anyway, I remember everybody would always be cringing to drink the olive oil, and I'd be sitting there just like a little Sicilian Neanderthal that I am, just sipping away at it, just so happy. Like I could just drink olive oil. I love it. When it's real peppery and green.
Oh, I love peppery.
But anyway, how do we get to olive oil?
I was just asking what you cook in.
Yes. So I will use the really good olive oils when I'm doing a really good meat, or otherwise I don't usually cook with it. I'll just have it raw, put it on top of salads and things like that because I just love the flavor.
What are some other game animals or cuts that you like to work with?
Local or not?
It doesn't matter.
Python.
Really?
Oh.
Man,
obviously,
this is
Daniel.
great because we've been chasing down some leads in Florida because I was like, I would love to go and harvest a python out of the Everglades. And we spoke to a very interesting woman who was like, yeah, I'll cook them, but they're gross.
Well, I have been working with the Wildlife Game Preserve down there I haven't for 2 years, but before that, when they started to do a hunt and everything. So she was going to sign me up for the next year to come down and cook, and the whole thing fell through. And so she gave me the list of everybody that received were awarded licenses to go python hunting. But you know what? Who wants to have a woman they don't know go python hunting? So that has never been successful for me. So my girlfriend's boyfriend lives down there. So once this whole pandemic is over, I want to go down there and see if I can.
They're open for business down there.
I know it. And so that's why I'm not going to see her for a couple weeks. I said, I know. I have a friend down there, and they're just like, it's
open
crazy.
For business, yeah.
But so about 5 years ago, my husband bought me for my birthday this big package of all these different game meats.
Oh, cool.
So python. So I'll just go through them first. Python, iguana, llama tongue. Were two other ones that I hadn't had before, but I think they were in combinations of sausage. But the python, are you familiar with monkfish?
Yeah.
So you have scallops, then you have monkfish, then you have python.
Really?
So the python.
Let's describe for people monkfish real quick. Just sometimes people will be like poor man's lobster.
Exactly. So when you first look at it, it's the texture of a scallop. It's
mostly like kind of back straps down the back of that fish, right? Because he's a real wide-mouthed, flat-headed fish.
Yes.
And you're mostly taking. It's not like fillets as much as it's like it's like cleaning a cusk, kind of.
Yes. It's. Oh.
Oh, hello.
This is Mojo.
Oh,
Hey,
Mojo.
Mojo.
That's a cute walk you have.
He's got arthritis.
Hello.
Orange cat just walked in the room for the listeners.
Yeah.
It's not some
my
person named
20-pound little baby.
Man. Oh, no.
Hi, honey.
Hello.
So the I know, isn't monkfish interesting?
Oh, it's so good.
Because the head is so huge, and then the body.
Some ground fishing every summer, and I'm always hoping because they occasionally I go out of Perkins Cove on the Bunny Clark, and they occasionally somebody will catch one, but I've never been fortunate enough to. We're usually fishing haddock, pollock. We get a lot of cod bycatch, but occasionally something like that will come up, and man, I'm just waiting for my chance to get one. They're so amazing.
They are. And so it's like it's a little bit firmer than a scallop, the monkfish are. And
Like a lobster tail, kind of.
Yes, but it's not even that kind of firm,
correct,
you know?
yeah.
And so the python is similar to that, only it's just bigger. So I just cut it, and it's firmer.
It came removed from, so you didn't have ribs or bones or anything?
No, it came filleted.
So you think it was like the backstrap, basically, of the python?
Yes. I mean, it was this. No, I didn't think it was a backstrap. I thought it was the python. I think it was a smaller python because it was like.
But there was no bones.
No. It was like a giant scallop or a giant piece of monkfish. It was like probably this big.
Whoa.
And so I sliced it in steaks and it was just so delicious.
Whoa. Interesting.
Yeah, I was looking for the recipe. I couldn't find it. But the iguana was delicious.
Yeah, how'd that come?
So because my husband didn't know to ask specifically for a piece, we got the back and not the tail. So there was very little meat. But it reminded me of squirrel.
I'm
It's
gonna
like a
bring
dark.
you some. I'm gonna bring you some this year because I go down to Florida to the Keys and I leave a snare down there. My buddy's built me 5 of them now. I have broke them all. The fifth iteration is pretty powerful. But it's a fishing rod basically that we put a snare on the end of, and I just cruise around the Keys, scooping up iguanas, putting them in the cooler.
Oh my God.
And then usually I'll skin them right there, freeze them, and then bring them home as carry-on in my luggage. And so this year when I go, I'll get you a couple because they're awesome to work with.
If you get more than a couple, we'll make a dinner here.
Oh, let's do that. I would love to do that.
Yum.
Because they're so, I mean, it's a really fun, one of the things that's cool about hunting them is that you hunt them, they're out like middle of the day. So, you get so used to like dawn and dusk as your sort of killing hour or whatever, but they're out like sunning midday. So that's when you're finding them is like when it's the hottest. But man, their meat's great. Like you said, a lot like a squirrel, but kind of a little more oily than a squirrel too.
Yeah, actually, yes. It reminded me of mackerel.
Yeah.
That kind of difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I loved it.
Man, I like it too. Yeah, and they've got such a problem with them down in Florida right now that they're sort of begging you to take them. You don't need a hunting license or anything. You just
Like coyotes, free range. Just go get them.
yeah.
I love seeing the TSA react to them too.
When they open my luggage. Sometimes I just go, those are iguanas. They immediately zip up the bag and hand it to me.
Yum.
I've had other people pull all of them out. It's gonna be frustrating. You did what was your seafood book called?
Free range fish and lobster.
Yeah. What kind of fish are you working with in that?
All kinds. And I even did some dairy-free things. So there's lobster, of course, and cod and halibut, and I mean, it's just across the gambit.
Yeah. We're really lucky here with our marine resources that we have.
Oh, we are. And right here on Moose Pond, we have so many bass.
Yeah, this side.
Yes.
Because I fish on the other side of the causeway for salmon. And
Trout?
I haven't really fished trout over on the other side. I know that people do. They fish brown trout mostly over the other side? Or they got some big brookies in there?
No, I think it is,
Browns
it's not
is what
brookie.
I think that they troll for browns a bit. But this side, I imagine a lot of pickerel, a lot of perch, probably a lot of bass.
Yeah, and you can see our fishing kayaks out there.
Oh, you guys fish it?
Yes.
Cool.
And when you get a nice, when you get a nice pickerel, that just pulls. And Don, he's gotten some great big bass that I just pull them. It's awesome.
Bass is a pretty good eating fish despite the sort of sport fishery. I know people don't think of it as a food fish, but...
Yeah, one brother loves it, the other two don't. I'm not a bass fan.
Okay, I like catching them in the early winter because there's one place that opens, Otter Pond.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can fish that before January 1st if you have ice.
Oh, really?
And so I'll go out there and they've got almost cookie cut 2.5 pound bass. You just catch the same bass. It feels like every trap constantly. And that time of year, they don't have that parasite load, the meat's really nice and white. And so I'll eat a few bass in the early part of the year. But
now I have to think about when I ate it.
Because, in the summer, they're all flecked. They've got those little nematodes or whatever all through them. They're really gross. The freshwater fish will gross me out in the summertime a lot of times.
So I made 2 bass recipes for Maine Sportsman this year.
Okay.
Smallmouth and largemouth. I said, Don, go catch me a bass. And so we did,
That's cool.
And so maybe that's why I just didn't like the flavor of it.
Yeah, because they'll get a bit of a lakey kind of flavor sometimes too. Yeah, I will get those suckers in the spring. You ever do those? The sucker fish. They come up out of the lakes.
Oh,
here.
wait a minute. Oh, not the. No, I haven't. Never here.
No, not here. Right up the road, though.
Okay.
I'll get them right up the road. And
Well, up in Spencer Lake, that's when we go ice fishing with my brother.
Yeah.
Those are the ugliest fish I've ever
that
seen. Those
real strange papillose mouth. that it
mouth.
has.
I know it looks like if it goes by you, it's just going to latch on
No
and
jaw.
never let go.
Yeah, no jaw. That they're a really ancient kind of mouth structure that they have.
Weird.
You ever tried eating one?
No.
You should bring one to
Yeah.
Kate
Oh, this spring.
to cook with.
It's right during the fiddlehead season.
Well, maybe that would go good. You know, lots of butter and vinegar.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
you bring me lake trout. I love.
Yeah, can we
Oh.
talk about that? Grant lives on Sebago, and he fishes with some folks that are big into lake trout fishing, but not into lake trout eating. So Grant ends up taking on
Smoke
lake
a lot of lake trout.
Oh, bring it on. I've got a curried lake trout.
I bet that's good.
Yeah, and then I have well, I use it also for making seafood, cold seafood pâtés.
Wow, what's that? How do you make that?
I make it with fresh goat cheese and herbs and onion and a little bit of Worcestershire, I think.
That would be
I'll have to
neat.
look at the
So you're
recipe.
cooking the fillet and then blending it with that
Yeah,
stuff?
cook it, cool it, and then you mix it. So it's almost like a cheese ball. Or smoke it, and that gives it a nice flavor in the goat cheese.
That's what I did with the alewives this year. But everybody's just like, what is this, cat food?
I remember you brought it over. I was like,
you gave it to your
I was like,
dog.
put it in my fridge. Yeah, I'll get to it. I fed it to my dog.
But that's the alewives. They're pretty intense.
They are intense.
They're very strong.
Yeah. I canned them this year. I
That's
love
the way to do
fishing
it.
them so much. I love dip netting them so much that we are trying to figure out how to love eating them, you know? Because I
Man,
like the
that-
traditions of I like having every part of my calendar year having another species. I just love that feeling of connection to the land through all these different activities. And so I want to participate in the alewife fishery, and every year it's like, okay, how do I make this into something I can use?
Did you go up to Nebraska, where the big ladder is and everything?
I don't think we've gone to that spot.
All right, we'll have to. It's a little side thing I'll have to tell you
Okay.
about later.
Yeah. Well, tell us about it.
So my girlfriend and her husband live right there. The alewife ladder is right there.
Oh,
At the
okay.
end of. I just had a brain cramp. What's the name of the lake? Damascotta Lake.
Okay.
They're right in Newcastle.
Okay.
Right at the tip where the alewives go up and down.
Oh, neat.
And watching the eagles come in to
Yeah.
get them.
Yeah. It's so awesome, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like something, it feels so ancient, because we don't have those, obviously with all the damming and the logging that happened in the past, all of our anadromous fish runs were kind of just decimated. So seeing a run of fish coming up the river like that's so special,
It is. We don't have a lot of that.
No, because we used to have obviously salmon, using them, even the sturgeon, the striped bass, which mostly hang out on the coast now, but we used to run our rivers, and so much of that's been lost. So I love seeing it with the alewives. It's so fascinating. Geez, what else? What are you doing with lobster in your book?
Oh, let's see. Oh, a couple different ways I've grown up macaroni and cheese with lobster. So when I worked in Switzerland one summer, I learned how they make their fondue. And so one of my recipes is using all the cheeses for the fondue.
Wow.
And I am now lactose intolerant, I think, from all the cheese I ate when I worked in Switzerland and here. And then also I was a chef for a lobsterman up on Mount Desert Island one summer. And so every week he'd bring me 19 or 20 lobsters, and I'd make him, 5 or 6 dinners for the week. And so I just did tons of recipes using sauces and herbs and wine and
Yeah. Was it hard to leave that area of Mount Desert Island and come down here? Because for people listening, Mount Desert Island is where Acadia National
Park is. Bar Harbor's on the other side. We were in Pretty Marsh.
And is it Mount Desert or Mount Dessert?
So it was
It's spelled dessert, isn't it?
Yes. Well, it was Mont Desert that discovered.
Ah.
And so depending
it's neither.
upon So it depends on
It's
how long you've
French.
lived on the island, you know.
So I was like, it
Right.
can't be desert island.
No.
Yeah,
But then I
like-
talk to people who've lived there and they say
But then it's
that.
like
Yeah.
desert. What's that have to do with anything? You know,
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess
that's
the
my
desert
only-
of we have that little desert of
Desert of
Maine where it's
Maine.
been, you know, from the sheep there. But yeah, for people listening, also our episode of that we made lobstering in the WildFed TV show is right in that area in Stonington. But that's like one of the most beautiful places in the country. I mean, it's really, really remarkable. And I love this area too. Obviously, I live here, but wow, leaving the coast.
It was difficult for me to
bet.
leave the island. I mean, I really loved it there, but mostly because that was the first kitchen my husband let me design, and it
Oh,
was
yeah?
huge.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all open. I mean, we love the open concept.
Yeah.
But I had like 42 drawers and, you know, so many cupboards and, I mean, 2 dishwashers,
Oh, yeah.
a china
Nice.
cabinet. I mean, because I love to cook.
Yeah, and it sounds like
And
you put on
social-
dinners too, or
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's your essential kitchen equipment that that people might not always think about that you find that really helps?
My curved knife.
like a paring
Like a
knife?
hawkbill?
Yes, it is my.
Really?
I cannot live without it. It's a curve, and you use it for everything: hulling strawberries, getting peels off of potatoes,
How long's the blade?
crush it. I'll show you. It's
2.5 inches, 3 inches.
3 inches.
So it's like
Okay.
a paring knife, kind of.
Yeah, I have a little Shun hawkbill like that, but it just sits in my drawer. I don't use
I
it.
use mine all the time. Like I was just skinning a beet with it yesterday. It's like I don't use a peeler anymore. I just use that.
Yes, me too. I mean, it takes a lot longer, but I just love the feel and the work of working on my vegetables and everything.
Yeah.
All of that.
Blender?
Food processor.
Yeah.
I don't use my immerser.
Yeah, that's an immersion blender.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, I can't live without that, you know, for my barbecue sauces and my purees and my soups and all of those things.
Do you do any pressure cooking?
Yes. Tuna fish and soup. So I buy fresh tuna and can it.
Really?
Make your own canned tuna fish. Put anything in there? Like any spices or anything?
Nothing.
Then you just use
Straight
that,
tuna in-
Nothing.
in the
then you
jar.
spice it up later.
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, you don't need. People put oil sometimes. I don't like oil. Some people put salt. I don't. I just squeeze the tuna in, and it's delicious.
Wow.
It's all about flavor.
So talk to me about this flavor layering philosophy.
For me, it is a challenge to accumulate the layers of spices I want with the outcome. Like, I will make a soup or a sauce and layer flavors on until I get what I want. And people will go crazy about it, and I'll just say it's not right. And they'll say, you can make it again. I'm like, nah, I didn't write it down. But it's just, you know, when I learned how to make curries, there are so many different areas on, you know, in the cultures of different curries that you would never even believe. You know, some don't, well, it's just, there's just too many spices in India to do the different
Right,
combinations. And they, 1 or 2 spices will change. You add fenugreek in this one and not in this one, and totally different
Wow.
flavors. And so all of that, learning how to do the curries, just made me even more curious about layering other things together. That's why we have a little bit of, so this allspice is in here are from berries I brought back from Belize.
Oh, no kidding.
And their berries are bigger, and I like the stronger pungency of it.
I find it very easy to find protein on this landscape and fats on this landscape. And we harvest and process acorns. We harvest and process wild rice. So we get these carbohydrates. And what's hard around here is getting flavors off this landscape, or at least I'm not real good at that. You know what I mean? Because like you were talking about these curries and allspices and thyme and all this, but out here it's like trying to figure out how to find the flavors. That's an area where I'm a little bit weak in my quest to eat off this landscape. So I feel quite dependent on the spice trade, if you know what I mean.
Me too. I'm just learning that. So you probably saw Brenna May grows and sells at Patch Farm the ginger and turmeric.
Her ginger's amazing. That young ginger, wow.
Yeah, I know, but it's not enough of it for me.
Yeah.
I use ginger so much of it that
Right.
it would go really fast.
Yeah, it's like that's cute, but I'll need more. Yeah, but
when I travel, ever since I was 14 years old, when I first tasted saffron in Spain, wherever I've traveled in the world, the first thing I do is, what do you have for spices?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
We went to Beijing. I came home with so many different spices. When my stepdaughter went to India, I said, here's $100, get me some saffron. All right, I don't know how else to say it, but she brought back, I still have some from 2008 that it's still, it's at the edge.
Right.
But all I can call it is the street value. All right. So I gave her $100, and the street value here would be over $900 for what she got.
I was going to say, I mean, isn't it, I think per pound, it's like one of the most expensive food ingredients in the world.
Yes.
Or herbs in the world. Wow.
But
wow, $100 and you got $900
yes.
worth.
And I've been using it, all this time.
That's funny. I was talking to Ivani the other day. I'm still eating cacao that I have from, it's like it's probably a decade old. If you treat things right, sometimes you can get quite a bit out of them.
Well, I'll have you smell some spices after, but my coriander still smells really fresh, like nothing you'd get in the store. Fresh. I had 2 pounds of turmeric ground when I was in Belize.
Yeah.
And that was 7-8 years ago, and you'd think it was fresh.
What do you think about American food culture in the last decade or two? I mean, when I think back to being a kid, it was like we had almost no food culture in the U.S.
Meat and potatoes.
It was terrible, and everything was boxed, and everything was so processed. And there's been such a tremendous renaissance around food and flavor and local and, an ingredient focus. So how has that been as somebody who cooks so much, watching that over the years?
Exciting.
Yeah.
And now people I can talk with people about food and layers, where I couldn't before. That was like, oh, I don't get that. Or my girlfriend who was designing her kitchen and she doesn't cook, and her husband goes, oh, well, where's the stove? She goes, I don't cook.
Oh, no.
Isn't that funny? So
it's hanging right here next to this cabinet.
Yeah.
Just push a button.
So there are people that, that don't cook or have no desire to.
Right. It's such a nice way to express yourself, though. And I think as far as art forms go, it's so intimate when somebody eats your art form. And it they make their body out of something that you created. I mean, it's a really powerful thing I think it really drives me to do what I do because I just love the opportunity to feed people.
Me too. But when you make a masterpiece and you sit it down and you pair it with whether you have your side dishes or wine or beer, whatever, just the whole thing together, and you don't hear a word because people are eating, and it's so good. That is just like,
it's ephemeral too, because it's sort of like maybe the Buddhist monk tradition that we see sometimes with the colored sand. And they make those beautiful mandalas, and then they just trash them at the end.
Yes.
And it's sort of like, but it's similar where you
cool
make this amazing thing,
that.
but then it's gone. And you're left with like bones and compost, and it's like, I guess you can't make some piece of food and then for years revisit it over and over again like you could a painting or something.
Right.
And so you're constantly having to repeat and do again and try again, and I like that about it too.
That's why I love the movie Babette's Feast.
I've never seen it.
Oh,
Babette's Feast.
Yes, I'm not going to tell it.
Okay.
It's foreign.
Okay. I've only known one woman named Babette. She breastfed my brother once when my mom left the room. And I remember my mom coming back. It was her good friend. But I remember my mom coming back in the room, and it was really awkward. I was a little kid. I didn't understand all the politics. But I just remember, my mom being like, "Excuse me." I got to bring that up to him soon. Such a funny story. Oh, man. But, you got to give us a little synopsis on Babette's Feast.
The bottom line is this woman wins the lottery, and all she wants to do, she goes out and she's in a village where people don't appreciate food. She spends all her money getting food from around the world and making this feast for her friends.
Ooh, I got a wifey at home who would like that story, I bet.
So that is a second inspiration. My first inspiration, which I have the picture up in my studio, my pottery studio, is...
You do pottery too?
Yes.
Of course you do.
Is Renoir's famous luncheon at a boat party.
I don't know it.
And it is all these friends sitting around the table, talking and drinking and eating. It's just a whole social. And I actually read the book about how it came to be, which is just adds even more. Yeah. And my husband found where the original is, and we went down to see it in DC.
Oh, nice.
And I saw it twice before I went. The third time that I went, I was looking at it, and the woman says, "Is something the matter?" I was like, this looks so different than the last time I was here. They had just put that glass over to protect it.
Oh, interesting.
All these years it had not been protected.
Oh, wow.
It's in a private collection.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. Yeah, I feel like those memories of meals shared with people are... my assumption is those will be some of the sweetest memories at the end of my life.
Yes.
You know?
And it's not all of my parties I had. It's not those. Yeah. It's those few individuals where the whole dinner came together, and the conversation and the wine and...
Yeah. Oh, we got to do an episode with Kate.
I agree.
'Cause I think you'll appreciate the way our show works and what we're really trying to capture. I think a lot of times when they're hunting shows, fishing shows, there's not a lot of foraging TV, obviously. We're sort of trying to pioneer a little bit in that space, but they tend to either be, there's like the sort of macho approach to it, or the sportsman's approach. Mm-hmm. There's the survival approach and all that. We're like trying to go for this like mirthful thing, especially at the end of the episode, and capturing that joy of shared meals and not being about the individualness of it as much as about the communal part of it, which I think is the more beautiful part.
You get me teared up because that's exactly how I feel, when doing big dinners. So yes, this would be wonderful.
Okay. Little beaver thing going on here.
Yeah.
All right, because I got this beaver bog down the street, man, and I'm gonna be taking. My goal is to manage. I've been sitting up in my tree stand and watching the beavers when they come in the morning. They come back across the dam and go back to the lodges, and I'm sitting there looking at it and thinking, what will happen to this property if I lose those beavers? And it just becomes a forest again. And right now it's this beautiful pond, and my goal is to keep them there. I want them to know, like, hey guys, stay. But there's so many of them, I'm worried that they'll actually end up eating out all of the food resource too. So I want to try to manage that population just right. But I think I can take 3 or 4 this winter. So maybe we can connect up and do something. I'd like that. Gee, any kind of thing you want to talk about before we go? I want to eat this bear dish.
Oh my God! Yes,
I want to eat this, but I want to keep talking.
No, we have to because I took it out of the oven and it.
Oh, and it's cooling off.
Yeah, so or maybe I'll put it back in.
No, any closing thoughts while we're? What do you want to leave people with? And where do people find your books, by the way, if they would want to check out some of these recipes? Because people are all listening to this from all over.
So they can email me at blackflystew.com.
Okay. like Stew, Stew. Mm-hmm. It's a good name. Mm-hmm. It's kind of have to be a Mainer to appreciate that. But.
Well, there is a story for another time how that came to fruition. But they are in like the mom and pop stores all over Maine.
Okay, but they're not going to find them on Amazon or something like that.
Yeah, they will. They won't find the Beaver cookbook on Amazon. Okay. That I only have. They have to get that one through me.
Okay.
But my other cookbooks are on Amazon.
Awesome. Great. Well, it's been really fun talking with you today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's chow.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. You can help us grow this show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh, new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out the WildFed video show and store. WildFed. Food is all around you.